Hey lady, welcome to the Postpartum on Purpose podcast. If we haven't met, my name is Anne Marie. I'm wife to James and mom to 5 beautiful kids, ages 9 down to 2 months, with 1 miscarried baby. It is my hope to help other women experience postpartum as a time of grit, growth, and grace.
This is episode 68. Hi lady, it's been 2 weeks since I spoke to you last because last week we were sick. On Tuesday, and I always record on Wednesday, on Tuesday I lost my voice completely, and by Wednesday it really wasn't back. And I thought about trying to record later on in the week, but it also, as it so happened, was our testing week for the first quarter for homeschooling, and it was just too much. But here we are this week. Let's start out with free things, and if you've been around here for a minute, you know that free things is something that I do every week because it's just an easy way of reminding me of that it is absolutely possible to live a beautiful, rich, meaningful life without breaking the bank, especially as you add members to your family, the more children you have. That does not mean that you cannot have a rich, meaningful, beautiful life. And then secondly, part of living that rich, beautiful, meaningful life is living in gratitude. And just taking note of free things each week is an easy way to think about just a few of the things we have to be grateful for. I want to invite you, if you are listening to this, to share with me your free things, and maybe I'll include them in an episode sometime. This week I have one from a listener that I wanted to share, and that was that she got a kid-sized camp chair, super cute, animal themed, because another mom brought it to share at the moms group that she went to. And then my free things for the week are, in no particular order, that a friend gave us coffee because, as it turned out, and I've never heard of this before, but as it turned out, her machine actually needs whole bean coffee, and what she bought accidentally was ground. And were we happy to benefit from that mistake? Yes, we were. I don't actually drink coffee. I don't like it, but my husband does every single day. And that was a great gift to us. I also got an email last week from the good people at Chick-fil-A, and they offered me an ice cream cup, which was perfect because Thursday my throat was so sore, but I needed to run errands. There were things that had to happen, like grocery shopping, and it was such a soothing sensation to just have a little ice cream cup. That was delicious and very much appreciated. Then there was also a Panera reward. Again, I don't actually ever buy anything from Panera, but they just keep sending the emails. Not often, but now I've gotten a couple of them lately. And my entire family enjoyed essentially 2 bites each of one of their large cinnamon rolls because it was a bakery treat reward. Also, this is something I was super proud of for my husband. And I think I was proud of it for him because it's like he's with me in this now. But at his workplace, if you are recognized by somebody else for doing a good job, for helping them with something, perhaps, you get points towards a rewards marketplace. And he chose to redeem his points for a supplement, the Mountain Ops brand. If you're familiar with that, they sell it at Shields and other places, but it's men's supplements, really, multivitamins or workout recovery or what have you. But he got a Mountain Ops supplement bag. I don't actually know exactly what it was, but it came in the mail and it was free. And then the thing that I wanted to tell you about last time, but I couldn't because it hadn't arrived yet, and I didn't want to say anything until it had come, but it's officially here, is I mentioned sometime previously that I wasn't sure exactly what we were going to do for postpartum family planning, especially monitoring my return of fertility. With each child, it's come back progressively later, and with my now 2-year-old, it came back at about 7.5 months, and I am almost 5 months postpartum now. I'm anticipating, based on that trend, that maybe 8.5 months perhaps this time, but we'll see. And I wanted to have a sense of that return to fertility if I could. Now, I've used Creighton method in the past, so I am aware of how to do cervical mucus observations. But if you listen to, I want to say it's episode 25 or 28, I did a comparison of my experience with both the Creighton method in postpartum and then also the Marquette method, and what, in my personal experience, were the pros and cons of each one, or really like the strengths and then sort of weaknesses or vulnerabilities. But I had talked about trying to use the mirror monitor for also symptom hormonal method of natural family planning and fertility awareness. But whereas the Clear Blue fertility monitor was reverse engineered in the Marquette method to use for monitoring return of fertility or pregnancy avoidance, pregnancy prevention, it only gives qualitative numbers, or excuse me, qualitative readouts like high, low, or peak suspected fertility. Whereas the Mira monitor also tests urinary metabolite levels, just like the Marquette method use of the Clear Blue fertility monitor does, but it gives you actual numbers. And you sync it with the app, the Mira Health app, and it graphs them for you so you can see. And then it also gives you some idea of what other users tend to have in this phase of their cycle. Now, I'm going to do an entire review on this a couple of months down the road to give you an idea of what it's like to use this in postpartum, because as just one note up front, when you are inputting your information, telling the monitor or the app a little bit about you to tailor some of your app experience to your personal circumstances, there's no place for you to put that you're postpartum. You can say you're just coming off hormonal birth control. You can say that you're pregnant. You can say that you have PCOS or a number of things, but you can't at present in the app indicate to it that you are postpartum and haven't had your period return yet, that you're just monitoring your return of fertility. But all that to say, I emailed Mira, the company, a couple months back, and then emailed them again a month ago and said, I would love to do a review of your product for Natural Womanhood, which has hundreds of thousands of readers annually, many of whom would be your prime audience in terms of interested in a natural method, but interested in a technological natural method of fertility awareness. Excuse me. And they wrote back and they said yes. So they sent me this monitor and a box of test sticks. No, granted, it's just one box. I was hoping for a couple months worth, but hey, they sent it for free. It's a $250 value when I looked on their website. I was just tickled pink. I mean, Jiminy Christmas. You know me. You know I'm excited when there's a free Chick-fil-A sandwich, for goodness sake. But this is something that's going to be, one, it's benefiting me in my personal postpartum. Two, it's going to benefit you down the road, because after a few months, I'm going to do a review right here on the podcast for you, so you can get an idea of whether it might be appropriate for you. And then also I'm going to get to share it with the Natural Womanhood readership, the much larger Natural Womanhood readership. All that just to say, I'm pleased as punch about it. I am pleased as punch about it. All right. I want so much to get to the actual content for today, and I made notes. I don't know if that means it's going to be shorter than usual because I have actual notes I'm sticking to, or longer than usual. I don't know. We'll see. But lastly, before we get to that, one small change. That's something else I've been talking to you about recently too. One small change to keep track of these small wins, the little pieces of progress in postpartum. And here's this one small change. Cecilia, the baby, is now almost, like I said, 5 months old. And she has transitioned out of the pack and play. And she is now in her crib, in her room with her big brothers. She is in the crib, and then the 2-year-old is in the toddler bed. And then my husband made and bolted to the wall a single bunk for our almost 4-year-old. We've got 3 kids in one bedroom, 2 kids in the other, the older 2 kids, and then ourselves in the 3rd bedroom. And we had been looking at moving and hoping to do that sometime soon, but just with interest rates and what you are or are not getting for the amount that you're paying for a house these days in the current housing market that we're in, and being within a year of paying off this house that we're in completely, we are just going to take a pause on looking for a house right now. And now that everybody has a bed, we are perfectly able to stay in this house for just as long as we need to. That I'm very, very grateful for. But that one small change, yeah. Homegirl she's out of the pack and play. She's out of the pack and play phase. All right. This has become an informal 3-part mini-series, the last 3 episodes. So this one and the 2 previous to it. And the first one, I talked about what to do when everyone thinks they need you at once. And that was really just sharing in a humorous, lighthearted way 2 movie quotes to kind of set the mindset that I think could be most helpful if you are dealing with lots of competing demands, especially from very small people, and many of them perhaps pre-rational people. You can't just reason with them. The second episode last episode was how to decide which child gets your attention first. And that was some more practical considerations for triaging the types of situations that you might be in. But the emphasis of this episode is really reducing what I'll call mommy meltdowns, reducing those high emotionally stressful times for you, or maybe you are acting out of emotion when you don't want to be, a highly strong and intense negative emotion when you don't want to be. And the way that we do that, one of the ways we do that is by building buffers into the day. Another way you could refer to this would be building bumpers into your day. So things that are helping you to increase your resilience. A buffer is something that prevents two antagonistic things from crashing into each other or coming into contact. And sorry, periodically pausing to cough, but trying to pause the recording when I can think of it in time, so that I am not coughing on you, so to speak. But yes, this idea of building buffers or brief spots or breaks into your day to increase your own resilience so that you are bouncing back, so to speak, emotionally from the stressful things better, so that you can just move forward with your day rather than getting stuck in something negative from one part of your day and then that kind of just latching on or glomming onto and coloring how the rest of the day goes. Building little spots into your day, little pockets, so that you can recharge or you can refresh. And I want to start out by saying that it can be helpful to think about your day in terms of, and the activities that make up your day in terms of a grid. And this is something that I got from a book that my best friend lent me about ADHD to help my daughter who experiences those symptoms. But something to help her. And it's to conceptualize your day as a grid of red, yellow, blue, and green activities. And red and yellow are both depleting. Red would be like depleting aggressively or depleting hard or a lot of depletion. And then yellow would be generally depleting your batteries, so to speak, your emotional batteries or even physical batteries, but doing it slowly. And then blue would be things that are slowly or in a small way that kind of build you back up, get you back into a more calm state. And then green would be things that just really are life-giving to you and filling your cup. You might think of red things as being like, depending on the squabble, kid squabbles could fall into either the yellow or the red category, I think, in terms of how much they deplete your batteries, or depends on you and your kids. Things that I think of as going into the yellow category would often include anything that requires a lot of decisions. And I think this is particularly the case early on in postpartum when you are experiencing low hormones as one thing, and generally sleep deprivation as another, but then just all of the adjustments that you're making to the things that are different and perhaps out of your normal routine. I'm talking especially in those early weeks. Maybe you're going to more appointments. You are just learning what it is to be a mom of one or two or three. And by that, I also just mean like one more. Okay, so if you're a mom of three, you're learning to be a mom of one more than what you had last time. So all of those things I think could go into a yellow category. I think of that also as either things that have a lot of steps to them or things that maybe you do infrequently, so you don't have a routine for how you do them, or you don't have them naturally built into your day. Things like answering a million questions from your child. Things like holding a crying baby. Things like scheduling appointments or returning things or paying bills. Multiple people needing you at once. That might go into a red depending on the day. But if you could just have some sense as you move through your day, and I don't mean in a robotic way, but just to get your reticular activating system thinking on it. What are some of the red and yellow things into my day? And I'm not even saying don't do those things. Some of them maybe have to be done, but it's more to have a sense of, is there a lot of yellow and or red going on in my day? And if you can just step back from that and maybe notice it, sort of as if you're looking at it through looking at it from a distance, not judging it per se, not like accusing yourself of anything, but simply to notice like what is going on in your day, how much of it is spent on red or yellow, so to speak. And then as far as blue and green activities go, we're going to get into that here with some suggestions a whole bunch of suggestions actually here in just one second. But I also wanted to offer, if the grid doesn't happen to be particularly helpful for you as a conceptualization of what I'm talking about, another option you have is to consider your day and then just assign the term nourishing or depleting to each activity. And you can, spoiler, even have nourishing / depleting, meaning there's some aspects of this activity or this part of my day that are nourishing and there are some that are depleting. And I'm going to offer you a walkthrough of the first half of my day just to give you an idea. And that is simply just to hopefully kind of get your wheels going, not at all a sense of you ought to do what I am doing, but just, oh, what is my equivalent to that during the day, or what am I doing around that same time of the day? I wake up and I write automatically nourishing / depleting because it sort of depends on, was I the one up first? And early on in postpartum, I mean, you're getting as much sleep as you can and you're taking it where you can get it right. So especially if you have more than one child, oftentimes early on in postpartum for me, and by early on, I really do mean until, I guess at least the first 3 months, close to 4 almost, in my personal experience, I'm getting up when the baby starts crying. I'm not up at a certain time of the morning, whether that's 6 or 6:30 or 7 or 7:15, depending on when the baby last ate. Just I am getting up for the day, so to speak, whenever I'm getting up. And usually I'm getting up in response to the baby crying. Now, the further on that I move in postpartum and the more predictable that Cecilia's sleeping is, then yes, it becomes easier to get up a little bit ahead of everybody else. Or honestly, I'm actually not quite there yet, but where I am right now at almost 5 months is I am getting up around the same time as the kids, but the 2 little boys are used to playing in their room for a little bit before they come out and are demanding breakfast and we're doing other things. So that's the part of postpartum that I'm in right now, where I'm getting up about the same time as they are, and I have around 10 to 15 minutes generally before those, people are coming at me. And so that's why I'm saying nourishing / depleting. It kind of depends on, did I get up first? Did I have a minute to sort of orient myself for the day? And of course, I'm saying a couple of prayers immediately before I get up. And you might say, well, I start my days Anne Marie with prayer. And my dear, if you're doing that, I love it. I love it. That is what I am moving towards. That is what is in my mind. But if I'm just being transparent with you, I'm just going to tell you that that is not actually how my day is starting right now, other than a couple of prayers that I say before I even get out of bed. But there is not a specific prayer time that is happening right now to begin the day. But what I have started doing just these last, I guess about 10 days now. No, more like a week. Anyway, what I have been doing is getting up, testing with the mirror monitor right away, and then it takes 16 minutes, just kind of an odd amount of time, not 15, not 16 minutes to read the results. Now, is there any reason that I couldn't just go about my day? Is anything waiting on me to learn those results? Well, no, it's not, but I'm finding that just that 16-minute time frame, if I don't have to go out of my room and do other things because people need me, that's a really good time for me to get dressed for the day. So I'm not coming back into the room to get dressed later on, but no, I'm getting dressed then. And I've talked about this previously. I'm very specific and strategic in the way that I get dressed, and also in terms of like the clothes that I keep. I only keep clothes that I really like, and I always have it in the back of my mind, are the things that I'm not wearing, and if there are, they are out the door, because I want to only have things in my closet that I really like to cut down on that decision fatigue, so that I know if I look in my closet, I open up the doors or I open up the drawer, okay, I've got options. Here are the options that I have. I pick something out, put some jewelry on, same story with the jewelry. Anything that I don't actually wear goes out the door, so that everything that I have is something that I like. Does every single thing go with every single other thing? No, not necessarily. But generally speaking, it's easy. It is the easy button to get dressed. All right, so I'm waiting for the mirror monitor to go. I will open up my Hinge Health app that I've been doing my little exercises and strengthening workouts for my elbow in. And those generally run 11 to 14 minutes. Okay, that's the perfect amount of time. It takes me a couple minutes to get dressed. I can do the little Hinge Health app. So that part is nourishing. If I'm able to do those things, those are nourishing. Those are blue, I would say blue activities. They're not super life-giving, but they are certainly not draining me. And it is a minute that I've taken for myself at the beginning of the day to kind of get collected and do something that I feel good about. I feel good about the clothes that I'm wearing. I am glad that I chose to move my body. I feel proud of having prioritized that. All right, let's move on, Henry. Jiminy Christmas. We've only just woken up, but we're only going through half the day, so keep that in mind too. Getting the kids dressed. I actually would assign a nourishing status classification to that because I picked out all of my kids' clothes. I mean, I bought them, but I bought them so that almost all of them would coordinate with each other. So there's, again, very little decision fatigue happening there. They're super cute kids. They're super cute in their little clothes. I actually really enjoyed that, even though, yes, they're wriggling and fighting and not necessarily listening that well, but I still consider that a nourishing activity. During breakfast. Breakfast can be nourishing / depleting. It kind of depends. Things are getting better with my 7-year-old, but for a very long time, every single morning, it was like, okay, wait, you need to eat. You need to eat. Okay, you need to eat. You need to eat before 8. You need to eat before 8, which is school. You need to eat. It's like, why do I have to tell you this every single day? But there is a lot less of that happening now, where it's like, okay, well, you have made the breakfast, but now you have to eat it. And then reminding her multiple times about that. Have you finished eating? You need to eat before 8. Okay. Now, generally speaking, it's, have you gotten up, gotten dressed, gone potty, and eaten breakfast? Okay, you need to do those things. Now, when she gets a little bit older, is the step that we're moving towards that I don't have to ask her if she has done any of those things, that I don't need to hold her accountable? Yes, of course it is. But I much prefer where we are at right now to, excuse me, to 5 or 6 or however many times asking. All right, so breakfast, nourishing / depleting, it kind of depends. I have this pipe dream in my head that someday we are going to read aloud during breakfast or listen to an audiobook or even classical music, because it just seems though like just a very relaxing, calming, good way to get into the day. But I think that will be maybe down the road. My kids are a little bit older than they are right now. Right now it's a bit of a stretch to have an almost 4-year-old, almost 2-year-old, and then 5-month-old. Just, it's not quite time yet. The school day is very definitely a D for depleting. It just is. Just checking things and reminding and answering questions and trying to teach and getting frustrated when they're not listening or what have you. And then the 2 little boys are eventually coming in at some point, which they play in their room. That part's lovely. But then, of course, they need a snack, or somebody starts crying. You have to get up and go deal with that. So I just put a big old D right there on the school day for depleting. Fortunately, it's over by noon. But it is what it is. That's just something to be aware of, right? That's always going to be in the yellow category and maybe close to the red, depending on what's going on. And then lunch can be a nourishing / depleting, kind of depending on the day and how difficult is it to get little boys down for naps, because as part of naps, I would say, is getting little boys down right after that to go to sleep. And are they actually going to sleep? But that's just to give you an idea, lady, of how can you build buffers into your day by looking and being aware of noticing what nourishing / depleting and or red, yellow, blue, and green activities, what sort of mix are you having of those? All right, blue and green activities, things to consider. 1, time spent with the Lord. Now, we don't just do this because it is a blue or green activity. We do it because he invites us to be in relationship with him. But noticing that our days are always better when we have spent time in his presence and with him, that matters. That's worth doing. Now, what might that look like? It might look like spending time in meditative quiet prayer. It might look like opening up the Hallow app and listening to or praying along with something. Maybe it's listening to Christian music. Maybe you're doing some praise and worship. There might be time for mass, adoration, confession, these more formal, either accessing of the sacraments or something that you would go outside of your house to do. But no matter what, reading your Bible, no matter what, being in his word, being in his presence, spending time actively paying attention to what he might be trying to say to you in your heart, or what he is saying. He's always trying to say things to us, but to the extent that we can, making ourselves open and receptive to him, that is so valuable. And you might say, Anne-Marie, I'm so early on. I can't hear in postpartum. I can't hear his voice. Okay. But could you just make space and see what you hear? Maybe you will hear nothing today. Maybe your head will feel very cluttered or noisy. I understand. But to some extent, we are training our brains and our bodies to receive. And we have to practice that. Excuse me. Which is something else I want to point out. And that's the value of building silence into your day. Now, I follow 2 different ladies, I think, on Instagram who are somatic therapy practitioners. I still haven't decided if I think that's like a legitimate practice or not. Like in terms of a certification or like an occupation. Because it seems to me like you don't necessarily have to be a counselor or a psychologist in order to be a somatic therapy practitioner. But I have found some very helpful things in some of what I have been hearing from both of these 2 different ladies. And they actually have kind of different perspectives, which is fascinating. Some of the same vocabulary, but sort of different perspectives. And one was just reminding her followers, listeners, viewers last week, it is so good for your nervous system to learn to or acclimate to silence. Maybe you're not always listening to a podcast while you're washing dishes. I mean, if you want to listen to me while you're washing dishes, no, I'm serious. You don't always have to be doing 2 things at one time, right? Or optimizing or trying to maximize everything in your day. Which, if you have a temperament like mine, can certainly be a temptation. But if you could build silence into your day on purpose, right? Maybe you're doing just one thing and you're just paying attention to that one thing that you're doing as best you can. And maybe the one thing is sitting down on the steps on your porch and watching your children play. Or maybe it's just folding laundry. Or maybe it's just starting a load of laundry. I don't know. But blue activities or blue and green activities can just be, I've built time and space into my day to be receptive to the Lord working in my life, even if that's not in a specific time I'm sitting down to pray, but just that I'm putting myself in a posture of receptivity that receives the reality of the world around me. It's easier to receive the reality, whatever it is, good, bad, indifferent, if I have put myself into a posture of receptivity through silence. And then hopefully that is also opening me up to really take to heart whatever it is that I am learning or hearing or reading in my formal prayer time. Other things, I think it should be non-negotiable. Maybe you already know this. Maybe everybody already knows this, but I didn't know it until another mom taught it to me. It was mandatory quiet time in the afternoons for your kids, no matter how old they are. So even once they phase out of naps, there still needs to be, for the health and well-being of the mom, there still needs to be a time of quiet, mandatory quiet for the kids. Now maybe that's just 1 hour. Maybe it's 2 hours. That's lovely. I don't know what's possible for your family, and maybe you need to kind of break your kids into the idea, if that's not what they're used to, that you're going to start small and work up to a longer time frame. But absolutely building kid quiet time into your day so that you have a chance to rest, to reset, to recharge in whatever ways are appropriate or helpful to you as an individual. Kid quiet time, I believe that should be mandatory. Rest. Sometimes I have a book, which is reading is a hobby of mine, and hobbies, of course, go into blue and or green. Activities, but maybe I really am actually quite tired, and it would have been best if I had napped first and then read with whatever time was left rather than reading the entire time. But then I am still tired at the end. You were a smart lady, and I'm sure you prioritize your time better than that. But I'm just putting that out there for you. Rest if you need it. If you need it. We don't always need it, right? Sometimes we don't actually need a nap. Sometimes we just need a rejuvenating activity. But if you perceive that a nap is in order, please take the nap first, and then everything else will fall into line after that. And the other thing I wanted to say just right here, and I said this last episode too, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Your phone does not count as a blue or green activity. It actually counts as a yellow activity. Scrolling on your phone is not actually refreshing, rejuvenating, or even relaxing you, in part because you don't have control over what you see. I mean, to some extent you don't. When you are scrolling, you might see something that is upsetting or frustrating or annoying or saddening to you, and it's already come across your eyes, so to speak, by the time that you've registered it. You've already had that emotional response to some extent that was involuntary, or even before you recognized what was happening. So our phones are not a buffer. They are not a break. They are at best a yellow activity that slows down maybe how fast we're being depleted, but it is not rejuvenating us. I know, it's annoying. But something else too that's been a helpful attitude to me lately. You might be like, Emery, how old are you? 5? But something else that's been helpful is to consider, if I were the type of person who had a life so interesting that I didn't need to pay attention to other people's lives, because I was generally present, willing to be present to my own. If I thought my life was that good, right? Excuse me. If I thought my life was that good, and didn't need to always be paying attention to and poking my nose into other people's lives, and even just like, well, what's going on? What am I missing? What am I missing? What am I missing? By being here at my home by myself with my children, what would I do then? And what kind of a mindset shift would that be for me to say, oh no, my life is rich enough, meaningful enough, and beautiful enough that I can pay my first fruits of attention and resources here. And even attention and resources for professional things, right? The editing work, the freelance writing that I'm doing, thinking about what I want to say for the podcast, just like actually being present here instead of always looking out either with a fear of missing out or just like, yeah, this isn't that cool. No, like if I were really going to be present to this time, how would that change my relationship with my phone? That it's not just something I'm doing because I'm bored, but also, no, I'm invested enough in what's going on here that I am willing to pay my full attention to what's actually happening in front of me. Just something to consider. I'd also love, especially if you're super early on, right? How you use your or do blue and green activities, it's going to change a lot early on in postpartum. Maybe in the first week that you're home with baby, maybe you can just do a tea time in the afternoon, right? Your time is not your own. You're figuring out your routine. I mean, there is no routine at first, but I'm just saying, like, you're figuring out that you don't have a routine and that you're going to have to move towards a different routine at some point. But just you're responding to the baby. When the baby needs to eat, the baby needs to eat. And the baby wants to sleep, you're trying to sleep, but you're also trying to put a load of laundry in. Like early on, maybe you just say every afternoon I have a cup of tea. Or maybe you say I got a coffee book from the library, the coffee table book, right? Lots of pictures, very few words, and you just flip through it and you just look at it and sort of let your brain rest for a minute. Maybe you have a book. And if you are pregnant right now, not yet postpartum, I would love for you to be thinking about what you want to do as your blue and green activities during postpartum. I would love that for you. Maybe that's reading, but maybe that's some other hobby. Maybe it's I'm going to resume knitting, crocheting, embroidering, needlepoint. I don't know. There's been a resurgence in what they call grandma activities or grandma hobbies, I think. If you've got some of those, yes, let's do that. Those sort of things that don't take a ton of mental energy, but they just are meditative and calming and relaxing for your brain. I love it. But just keeping in mind with a lot of compassion and grace, and also just practicality, that as postpartum moves, you are going to move with it. One of the most life-giving, totally a green activity for me, activities is line dancing. I love it. And I am now far enough out from Cecilia's birth that I can leave her for 2 hours. I mean, granted, I do this at a max once a week, but I can leave her for 2 hours. I drive the 22 minutes. I stay there for an hour and 14, 15 minutes. And then I drive the 22 minutes home before it's time to feed her and, get her down for her bedtime. It wasn't possible to do the line dancing thing early on, so it needed to be other smaller, quieter pursuits, as they would say in the book Little Women. But now I can do that, and then later on there's going to be some longer stretches of time away from her. These are all just things I would love for you to consider, lady, that your phone's not a buffer, that what your green and blue activities look like are going to change over the course of postpartum, that silence is your friend, of course not all day long, but just more than now. Whatever you're used to right now, just a little bit more than that. That spending time with God, spending time in His Word and aware of His presence, right? Because we are always in His presence. but aware of his presence, that is going to build you up and prepare you to be more present to the people around you, and ensuring that there is some kid quiet time happening, especially when you have older children. All those things I would just submit to you for your consideration, lady. I hope that has been helpful to you. Next week, we're either going to talk about when you are sick while you're postpartum, because that's a real trip. I can tell you that from last week. Or what was the other thing I was thinking of? Oh, it might do like a 5-month recap. Kind of like this is where things are at 5 months postpartum. I'm not totally sure yet. We'll see. I'll talk to you then.